This next Sunday is the third Sunday of Advent. We've been talking about Advent both in sermons and on the discussions we're having on Facebook. And the fact that Advent is a time for preparation and what that process entails, how we can open up and become more empty, more receptive, pure, so that the Christ impulse that penetrates the earth at the winter solstice, and for which we are celebrate Christmas, so that that Christ impulse has some fertile soil in us to take root, right? And so we talked about a willingness to allow those minotaurs that we may have consigned to their internal labyrinths of our subconscious to come out into the light of day so that we could make room there. Precious room that's being taken up by the demons of our own creation. And we have this incredible, wonderful experience now of the forces of nature helping us in this process. Everything from the time of the vernal equinox until now has been a time of internalization. Everything quieting down, everything shutting down externally. No distraction. It's hard to even think. Or at least think effectively.
I think you were right the first time.
And so we're being aided and guided in this process because we are part of nature, obviously. It's all around us, it's in us, we are nature, and everything is going deep within. And it's in that quiet that we find the problems of our own creation surfacing. Okay, that's the first things that we become aware of. The chatter of our own habitual thinking patterns. Okay. The looping of the tape that we've created. And if we're fortunate and persistent, we can allow that surface ripple on the pond to smooth out. We're not fighting it, we're not resisting it, we're not encouraging it, we're just letting it be. Whatever these feelings are, these thoughts are, these emotions have been, whatever it is that's coming up, these habitual looping thought patterns and these ongoing reinforced concepts that we have, we just let go of them and let them be, and they will kind of smooth out. Because it's in that smoothing out then that we can see through the surface of this pond deep into the depths. Okay. So that's kind of brings us up to where we've been in our conversations about it up till now. I want to read something, and it's out of the 10th chapter of Luke. And I believe I actually had given a sermon about this in part some time ago, or we talked about it in class. But it's popped up again, so it's time to revisit it, apparently. We're talking about Lazarus. Okay. Lazarus was a friend and disciple of the Master, Jesus, and he was sick unto death, and his sisters sent for the Master to come because they felt that he could help their brother, and Jesus didn't seem too perturbed, and they finally sent a message, don't worry about it, he's dead. And still not very perturbed, he shows up, and we know the story. He calls Lazarus forth from the tomb, and my favorite part of that whole story is his sisters say, but Lord, surely he stinketh by now. He's been in there 3 days, surely he stinketh. But sure enough, Lazarus is resurrected, back to life. And so, sometime after that, Jesus is visiting the home of Lazarus and his sisters, okay, Martha and Mary. Now it came to pass as they went that he entered into a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha received him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, which also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha was cumbered about much serving, and came to him, and said, Lord, dost thou not care that my sister hath left me to serve alone? Bid her therefore that she help me. And Jesus answered and said unto her, Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about many things, but one thing is needful, and Mary hath chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her. Okay. So we have this little intimate setting. We it's very domestic. We can all relate to, one person who's scurrying around and making ready, and the other person who's, kind of either being lazy or very attentive to the house guest. Lazarus is you. Martha and Mary are you. Okay? And if there's one thing that we have to start doing, and it's to take a look at the Testament and see it for what it actually is, a roadmap to spiritual attainment and initiation. And that gets lost in the New Age babble. Okay. We'll look many other directions and ignore the thing that is right before us. Lazarus is you. He was a follower of the Christ, a disciple, who the Master brought through the resurrection. Okay. That's the purpose of the whole thing, right? That we're supposed to die. Unless you die and be born again, you shall in no wise enter the kingdom of heaven. Right? He tells Nicodemus this. So, here we have this incredible, joyful occurrence where this disciple has gone through that death experience and has been brought back to life. He's been wakened up. He's not dead, he's sleeping, awake, just like to the maiden. She's not dead, she sleepeth, awake. And that's a call that we get. We're being called to wake up. That's all that this is about. Waking up. Waking up to what? Waking up to the fact that we're not our bodies. Right? We're not our minds. We're not the thoughts that fill our minds. We're not the desires that we have. We're not the concepts that fill us. We're none of that. All of that gets put to bed. Okay. Martha and Mary are your subconscious mind. Okay. The feminine is always representative of the subconscious mind or the soul. So why two? Why Martha and Mary? Well, again, when we were talking a little minute ago, we were talking about when you start to get quiet, the first thing you become aware of is all the looping and the various things that you've been habitually doing. That's Martha. That's the surface ripple. Mary is that part of you which sits at the foot of Christ in you, right? Yourself, that sits beholding, facing the God being that is in you and that is you. It has never been distracted by outer activity. So the subconscious mind knows one thing: receive whatever instructions it is given and make it happen. Make it happen. The secret of that is the secret of life. That's how we learn to navigate through life. If you want to know how to have a successful life, a happy life, or whatever, that's plant the right seeds, because it's a law, it's infallible, it's got to work. Right? Plant the right seeds, the right things will grow. Okay, we know that. We know that in nature, right? You can't plant a weed seed and expect, a sheaf of wheat to grow. Or vice versa. It's going to come up. As you sow, so shall you reap. It's a law, immutable. And so the things that plant those seeds are thoughts. And the thoughts that plant those seeds are thoughts that come from our conscious mind or from the collective mind in which we live. Because most of us don't have a lot of original thought. We're just sounding boards for the chatter that's going on in the mass mind, the collective mind. And because we allow that to play through our thinking process, it is treated in the same way as it would as if we had consciously sat down quieted ourselves, visualized clearly, and planted a seed for the outcome that we desired. And so we learn to quiet our mind so that that part of the process, the unconscious planting of garbage seeds, goes away. But then we're also faced with the habitual thought patterns that we've developed and life patterns that we've developed, and how we treat life and how we respond to life and how we relate to other people and our thoughts about ourselves and all that kind of psychological stuff gets thrown in there. And there's a lot of that that's on the surface. This is where we find the demons of our creation. Okay, that's where that's going to exist. This is the very first entree into the underworld, Hades. This is what they mean when they talk about the demons that are encountered in the underworld. These aren't things, beings that are out to get you, pitchforks and horns and tails. These are worse. They're our own creations, and they're subtle and they're sneaky, and because we created them, we know exactly what kinds of things can have the most impact on us. For what end? Well, to the end that we stop doing what Lazarus did, which was die and be born again. Because there's that part of us which really doesn't want to do that. Right? It puts up a mighty fuss. And the closer we get to it, the fussier it becomes. The kickback is huge. Right? Look at the 40 days and 40 nights that the Master spent in the desert after his baptism and the temptations. Okay. The harder you push, the harder it pushes back. But it goes away because we were told, resist not evil. Resisting it does what? Gives life to it. You acknowledge it as a real force, and therefore it becomes a real force. It's sort of like jujitsu. Somebody's throwing a punch at you, and you block it with your face. You successfully blocked the punch, but it hurts. Right? Whereas the idea is to let the momentum of that thrown punch be its own undoing. Just step out of the way and let it go by. The same thing with this process. These things come up in us, and we acknowledge them and let them go. So, in one of the discussions we were having in the Servants of the Way was about the divine feminine. And somebody asked if we could talk more about the divine feminine. And that's exactly what we're doing now. This is what this whole thing is about. Okay? Because the underworld is the divine feminine. It's the mother part of the Mother, Father, God. So obviously there's something here. There's a mystery here. How do we get to that part of it? Well, we know that we have to get past that ripple. We have to let Martha do whatever Martha's going to do, scurrying about, being busy, taking care of this, taking care of that. That part of our subconscious mind is very effective at helping us navigate through life. We've got a lot of things that are on autopilot that we've learned that are in, it helps our heart to beat, for crying out loud. So then without our having to think about it all the time. There's just things that are on autopilot. Some of them may not be as beneficial at some point. We might feel that they become detrimental to our progress, and so we have to weed those out. We don't want to stop breathing, and we don't want to stop our heart, but we certainly do want to stop that looping of that crazy self-defeating thought pattern. Okay. And so Martha does her thing, and then we look at Mary in us. Okay. Mary is there now in you. This Mary that we're talking about. Okay. Always beholding the face of the Christ. Always sitting there and receiving the teaching, the word, the guidance. Always. And that's what this season is about. Ramping up to Christmas, ramping up to the solstice, is going through this last process of aligning with the quieting down of Earth and all the Earth forces, and letting that internalization process carry us deep past the chatter on the surface, and enter the presence of this sacred place within, which is alive and it's warm. It's a womb filled with life, and it's receptive, and it's oriented towards the light of our being. It doesn't know what else you've done in your life. It doesn't know what errors or mistakes you think you have made. It's the connection point between the God self and your outer existence. And so we feel that. Now, if you want to, you can, right now, experience the bliss that comes with sitting in that presence. Being nothing, but feeling the movement of life from the core of being itself, moving into creation, expressing itself through love, extending itself into creation through love. And with that comes peace. And so we don't have to have a battle. We don't have to wrestle with this process. We don't have to try to become something. Period. This is who we are. And so we take a deep breath. And we feel that presence and that love. And we feel that connection with the divine. And we accept it, not waiting for ourselves to become better people. That's what I mean when I asked, what are we waiting for? What do we wait for in this process? What do we think we have to accomplish before we feel justified in accepting the gift, our birthright? And so what is that gift? Well, right now, we're talking about that gift of this solar impulse and this pulse of life and energy that is going to be filling the planet as we reach the apex of the longest night. And the process starts to reverse and the daylight starts to go on the ascendant. Can you feel it? Can you allow yourself to feel it now? We can throw all the flowery words on this experience of the divine feminine that we can possibly conjure up. All the wonderful metaphors and similes, the purity, the virginal quality, the womb, the mother, the nurturer, the life giver, the life sustainer, all of that and more, right? But it really comes down to this. Mary, sitting at the feet of Christ, listening and receiving. Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about many things, but one thing is needful, and Mary hath chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her. Martha and Mary are Lazarus's sisters. Lazarus was resurrected. Because he had been resurrected, Mary was in that place in perfect harmony and perfect balance. And so we remember that we are Lazarus, we are Martha, we are Mary, and yes, we are Christ. And if we can remember that approach when reading the Bible, and look at every one of the parables and all of the stories that are portrayed in the Gospels, with that eye to the esoteric side of things, then it opens up and we start to realize the gift that we've been given in this, in spite of 2,000 years of fiddling around with it and mucking around with it and rewriting it and politicizing and all the crazy things that there's still the framework of the path of initiation. Okay, I feel like I should say, let's have communion now.
You didn't bring it.
Do questions, comments, anything?
Well, I know when the question comes up, what are we waiting for? And I know for myself, it's, and it seems so ridiculous, but it's perfection. It's like I can't come before the Master lest I be perfect. And I guess what I also hear is that there was Mary, just as she is. And it's pretty much what you said, what you elaborated on. And I really felt that strongly, that I already am as I need to be. And that's a very beautiful thing.
That's my words of a very old hymn. Just as I am without one plea, but that thy blood was shed for me, and though my sins you do depart, to the Lamb of God I come, I come. What I find interesting is what's running through my head is this traditionally is the season of, biologically slowing down. The plants are going into hibernation, the animals are going into hibernation, and yet we as humans, in our vast wisdom, make it one of the fastest paced times of our year. And we can't figure out why we're always so stressed and tired when everything around us to which we are energetically connected is slowing down and going to sleep.
That's true.
There's a certain frenetic quality that everybody's activities take on. almost like if we run fast enough, we can avoid that quiet spot. And busy ourselves enough, distract ourselves enough, then we can ignore that thing. Because most people are more afraid of that Minotaur than they are looking forward to something that's beyond it. Most people don't know that there's anything beyond it, right? And we see the Minotaur surfacing this time of year in all sorts of ways. Go to a mall and try to go park your car.
Did you say no, thank you?
I said I'd rather not, thank you.
Yeah,
Especially in recent days.
cracks me up. People
Yeah.
cruising up and down the aisles with their cars looking for a parking spot, and there's this like people flipping each other off and all of that, and it's so incongruous with what else is going on, but it's so obvious why that's happening too, and you watch, and this would be a good exercise. Watch what happens after the 21st, after the solstice. Because it's those days between the solstice and and Christmas that all of a sudden the Christmas spirit, what people refer to as the Christmas spirit, starts to manifest. Like it waits and waits and waits to the last minute, and then all of a sudden, okay, now it's there, And it's because of that change that's taking place, and there's that energy starts to flow and move out again. The pressure is off. We don't have to look anymore. But the beauty of having created that perfect place within in which the Christ can be born is it's the virgin birth. It's allowing the Christ to be implanted in us in a place that had never been touched before. Now we're talking about the outer, working from the outer in, so that transformation can take place. The transformation only brings us to the recognition that we have always been at one with everything. That's the gift that happens on a solar level, the solar system level, and then we take that and we understand it on this cosmic level, and we then say, and how do I internalize it? What part of that? Because obviously we don't have to wait until Christmas for there to be a virgin birth. We don't have to wait for Easter for there to be a resurrection. Just because there are natural forces at play in the earth. Because you are more than earth. Certainly part of earth, but you are more than earth. And it's this process of raising the matter of earth and the mind of that matter, that consciousness of that matter, that is the way. That's the purpose of the way. Bringing it all back.